Today we've got a pretty interesting one. I have been breaking down this video for a little while now. I was getting ready to record, and I actually was finding this more and more interesting as I was kind of doing my research beforehand here. So let's hop into this. I'll tell you what we're talking about today. So I was scrolling Reels, as one often does, and I came across this video of a guy driving a new GR Corolla out on track. He's chasing down a 911, so you know, he's not going at a snail's pace. He's kind of keeping up with at least another car out there. And he gets into a big accident. So I'm going to play the clip first things first here just to show you guys what we're talking about here today. So this is the video that we're covering today. Pretty short, sweet, to the point, driving in a straight line, and then seemingly out of nowhere, under braking, back end just slips out, goes off track, and then slams straight into that wall. Very glad that the driver is okay. That was definitely a very hard impact. So as you can see, this was a big moment and pretty weird. So he's driving in a straight line up to the braking zone, gets on the brakes. He's already on the brakes. I'll throw a frame up right now. He's already on the brakes before the car slips out. It's right after he does that heel toe to get it down to fourth gear that the car slips out, goes off track and into the wall. Now here's where I find things really interesting, because when I first saw this video, I'm like, I'm just going to talk about this. Silly little guy just messed up a rev match, lost the rear end because the diff locked up and went into the wall. Case in point, done deal. But as I continued to kind of watch this here and read some of the comments, this actually became a much more interesting situation than I was even planning to cover today, which is why I'm starting this off with such fascination. It's a murder mystery, and we're trying to find the culprit here. We're all pointing at the guy who looks the most obvious, being the driver, being like, "You did it! You're the guy! James Woods is the killer!" You guys remember that episode of Family Guy, hopefully, or else that makes no sense at all. Like, James Woods is the killer, but then it's not James Woods, so we gotta figure out who it is here. So next important item on the menu here is he has a very in-depth caption on this post describing kind of all the relevant information of the whole day. Now, both from stuff that I know and stuff that I've seen from the comments, I'll kind of point out what the kind of key factors are here in this entire caption. I've never claimed to be a big mechanic. I'm much more of a driver, driving coach. You know, I understand the person behind the wheel much better than I understand the engine attached to the wheel. So as far as what I'm noticing specifically is that this is session 1, day 2, and this is his third track day. So he's relatively new. There is chance of making mistakes, but he's not a complete novice. This is not his first time on track. So mistakes are a possibility, but not a guarantee. Now, when it comes to the more mechanical side of things, he claims that his oil temp was at 254 degrees Fahrenheit. To me, that just sounds hot. But what a lot of people in the comments are pointing out here is that this car is running on 0W20 oil, and 254 degrees, with me being correct, yeah, it's hot. More in-depth people, a lot more knowledgeable than me on the mechanics, are saying that that is a temperature that is full-on cooking your engine. Like, you are toasting your motor doing that. And he also says in the comments here, he wasn't really taking hot laps and cool laps. He was just beating on the car for a straight session, which I honestly have done the same thing on track days. I just kind of wheel the car that I brought unless I can see that stuff is really overheating, which with an oil temperature like that, if it is apparently as hot as people are saying it is, he should have done the same thing. But he's not doing cool laps or push laps. He's just going consistent, fast pace. And that's fine. But his temp seems to have been cooking the motor, and that's something a lot of people are warning here. Now, this is where things get interesting to me, because combining the fact that he is relatively new, but not a complete novice. He is driving the car, and seems like he's going decently quick up until that point. He then all of a sudden has this big slide in the rear, seemingly out of nowhere. You know, a big moment like that would happen for two reasons. Either he got onto the brakes very sharply while still having steering in the car, which he didn't do. He was already on the brakes in a nice straight line, so that wasn't the issue. And then another issue would be if when he grabbed fourth gear, he was grabbing that downshift, he let off way too early, he did not properly rev match, and the car jolted all the weight forward and locked up that rear wheel and then sent him out sideways, just having a little bit of steering in the car. Now, that almost kind of looks like what happened, because he is grabbing the downshift right as he goes to slide out. But something that I want to point out, and this is something where, you know, this could just be a feature of the GR Corolla that I'm not aware of, but it has a very clear tack gauge on the dash. You see that big white bar there showing the amount of RPMs that he's driving with, and you see on the screen it goes to him in fourth gear, but that bar doesn't spike. It stays on the lower end. So that's yet another factor that leads me to believe that he didn't throw all the weight forward to the front of the car and cause it to spin around. So what did happen here? He definitely didn't do much to save the car. He didn't really try to countersteer it too much in the other direction, but obviously that's pretty clear. I'm getting more into how this all happened. Now I want to point out another comment here, because this is something that kind of trips me out, because it's from a pretty respectable person. This is a comment from Ben Collins, who is one of the ex-Stigs on Top Gear, so very talented driver, very quick guy. And he comments here giving his take on what the crash was, saying, "Too far from the steering wheel, arms too straight, and vague and delayed response to brake induced the yaw." Now, this feels very weird to say, because Ben Collins is obviously much more of a established professional than I am, but I don't really see how that relates to the situation at all. For one, let's talk about the steering first and foremost, since that was what he put as number one in his breakdown of what happened here. Yes, having proper steering is important. Every time I drive a car, I'm a pretty tall guy, I'm over 6 feet. So a lot of times when I sit in cars, I physically cannot get a nice 90-degree bend in my arms without my knees being inside of the dashboard. But that is the best way to drive a car if you are able to, is to have that nice 90-degree bend in the arms when you're holding the wheel at 9 and 3. Because by doing that, if you're in a situation like this where the car starts to step out sideways, you have that closer control, you have that easier range of motion to go hand over hand on the steering wheel to add corrections if need be. Now, the reason I kind of look at that and kind of squint my eyes a little bit is because that's not really why he went off. It just, something happened in the rear. It doesn't really have anything to do with your arms. Like, yeah, he probably could have had a bit more of an advantage if the wheel was closer to try and save it, but he didn't really do that much to save it in the first place. I don't think his seating distance really had much to do with the incident at all. He was very slow on the reaction time, and pretty much immediately once he finally did react, he was already so far in the other direction, rather than trying to turn it the other way back onto track, he kind of just committed to the crash and tried to avoid the worst possible damage, which, you know, if he had a faster reaction, he probably could have had a better attempt at saving the car. But I don't really hate what he did either, because there was a concrete wall there, and that is a legitimate health concern. You know, your health is paramount above the material possession of a car. So if he believed it was already gone and he just needed to get it out of the worst possible scenario, fine. Now going to the X-Stig's number 2 point about the vague and delayed response to the brake pedal inducing the yaw. That's yet another thing that I just am not really following. If he was in more of a corner and was turning the car a bit harder and then was really getting into those brakes and trailing them off and just leaving that weight at the front of the car, sure, I could understand the back end eventually coming around and spinning. But in this instance, he was going so straight, and the reason it snapped out to the left is because he did have a little bit of steering in it, but it was like a degree or two. It was more or less straight, just not entirely straight, and then the tires just completely slipped out in that direction, and he just wasn't ready for it. His reaction was definitely delayed, but we're talking about the brake pedal here for some reason, and I just don't really see it. Now, since I'm not as much of a mechanic or a, car mechanical kind of guy, I did do a little bit of research into this once I heard about the oil temperature and how much everyone was critiquing that. Because from the sound of what everyone's saying, Buddy was basically Heat Miser from that one Christmas movie and just roasting his entire surroundings being his own car. So I did a little bit of research into what that would possibly cause, and a lot of what the results came back with was generally that means you're gonna grenade your motor. So what that led me to after that is, if your motor were to grenade while driving, is there a possibility of the grenading motor locking up any mechanics on the car, or any other type of consequences that would result in those rear wheels sliding? And what it led me to was a couple things here. Sorry, I forgot to mention as well, the reason why I was also looking into the possibility of the motor grenading is a very good point that was also made in this guy's description here. He points out that in the braking zone, you can see 3 gauges off to the left-hand side. Now, he claims that it's the oil pressure gauge, but truth be told, in the video, you can't really tell. But he points out in the video that that oil pressure just leaves the building on the entrance of the corner, right where he fully lost that rear traction. So right before he loses the car, that oil pressure goes from cooking to cooked. It is out of the ballpark. It's gone. That bar drops completely to 0. You only see 2 white bars where there were 3 when he was coming up to the corner, and after that, the crash happens. Now, this is where it gets into a bit of speculation, because soon after this, the car bursts into flames and it's toast, cooked. You have no idea what's going on anymore. This leads me personally to 2 possible leading theories here. I've got a plan A and a plan B, and we're going to wait for Sonny Hayes to come back to us with our plan C. Yeah, equip the GR Corolla with a 50 cal, studded tires, gunmen in the back seats, making sure that no one gets around us here and we make it through this turn nice and clean. Oh, oil slick on the track? Pfft, send the other guy behind me through it. I'll push him through it and wreck him. That way JP wins the race. Still loving the Plan C memes that are coming around. It's definitely the most ridiculous thing about that movie. If you're interested in that movie, I did make another video previously reviewing it if you want to see my thoughts on it. So like I said, I have 2 major theories here about what I personally think happened. So let's kind of run through all the facts briefly once again, just to kind of talk about what happened here. So this guy's coming up to the corner. He gets on the brakes. He does not lose the rear end while on the brakes. He doesn't lose the car until grabbing that downshift from 5th to 4th. But on the screen, it does not show the tachometer spike the revs at all, which leads us to believe that 4th was never truly grabbed to throw all that weight forward in the car. So what did throw that weight forward in the car? My possibilities are, since we see that oil pressure gauge drop to 0, the chances are the motor grenaded. The car caught fire after the wreck, so there could have been hot oil and it could have caught on something, caught a spark, lit the car up in flames. I believe either A, the motor grenaded as he was coming into the corner. It's hard to hear because there's a lot of wind noise in the video, so you can't fully rely on sound. Maybe the motor grenaded and it just wasn't very loud, but that caused the motor and the drive shaft to seize in the car, causing things to lock up and spin the car off track. That one, there's some room to play with, obviously. Why did only the rears slide, not the fronts lock up? Bit of debate there, which also leads to my second theory as well. Since the oil was cooking at 254 degrees, which, as a lot of people had pointed out, was way too hot, the motor, again, possibly grenaded, fully lost oil pressure. If the car fully lost oil pressure, that could mean oil was falling out the bottom of the car, where it wouldn't get on the front tires, but it does have total possibility of getting on the rears and causing that car to just pirouette right there off the track, fully out of control. Something that maybe would have been savable if our driver had a little bit of a quicker reaction on the steering wheel, but he didn't. He went the best mode that he could for damage control and avoiding injury, which, again, you know, possibly could have reacted faster, but prioritizing safety is absolutely paramount, so avoiding that concrete wall, I think, is a big enough win for what he did do there on the wheel. Hey, sorry, don't get Sonny Hayes, but I'm here with Plan C. After the initial recording, I actually talked with one of my really good friends who is another driving coach about the situation, and we were kind of shooting back and forth about our take on what the problem was. But he actually also believed that the amount of steering that the driver had in the car before the wreck was actually enough for the wreck to happen alone. Now, me personally, like I said earlier, I just feel like that's such a small amount of steering. I feel like that's not the sole reason that the crash happened. But I wanted to add this in here as well because I like this discussion of piecing together what the potential cause could have been. And even though it's not an opinion that I entirely agree with, this is an opinion that comes from someone that I respect a lot who is in this same space. So I wanted to include it here as well, just to kind of have the full scope of what we think could have been the possibility, even outside of just what I personally believe. Because like I always say, I'm a driving coach, but I'm some guy on the internet. You don't have to listen to me. We're just having fun here. But that's pretty much it here. So those are pretty much my two theories on what happened. Obviously, there's still room to play around with. There's a lot of information we don't know, but based off of the description here, I do kind of agree with the guy we're on board with. He said a similar thing here, saying that oil spewed from the bottom and got onto his rear tires, allegedly. He also doesn't know. Obviously, he was in the car. But I do agree that I think something had to do with the motor grenading and that loss of oil pressure causing the car to lose traction. But that's pretty much it. I got everything out there that I wanted to say, so I'll quit yapping here. I'll let you guys get on your way. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have your own thoughts on it, please let me know. Yeah, I'm super curious. I think this is super interesting. Again, really glad that the driver here was able to get out safely. That was a really scary crash that he very much managed to avoid genuine injury on, even given the fact that he went off and had that wreck. So, you know, I still give him props. Good thing on keeping himself safe there, even in a situation that was as quickly and unexpectedly out of control as that. So good for him. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you guys for watching.